KingofPodcasts.com proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast because wrestling needs us. Brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. KOP is all about Amazon, and so should you. Go to King of Podcasts' special link at KingofAmazon.com. The entertainment and media industry have written some articles to document, in essence, the first anniversary of the Wednesday Night Wars, which have been very tame at most. Anyway, Wrestling is Real Podcast, episode 563. Thanks for being here. Let's move along. Variety.com put out several stories in the last week talking about both brands, WWE and AEW, and definitely a tale of two different companies and their directions when you look at what's going on. And I'm not sure what to think about when it comes to the PR spin that comes off of this, because Variety.com, very prominent Hollywood magazine. And for them to go ahead and take the headlines, and I'm just going to read the headlines real quick, but we're going to get into the stories and delve in both of them tonight. So last week, I think it was like Thursday or Friday, they wrote a story called WWE's Mounting Problems, Audience Decline, Saudi Arabia, Andrew Yang. Which I don't think I brought up Andrew Yang yet, but we'll talk about that. And then this week, Variety writes about AEW continuing to grow 1 year after launch of Dynamite on TNT. So is there much of a reason why Variety put the story out for Dynamite as they did? And what does it say about the story that they put out just from the headlines alone? People are looking at that. The industry itself, the broadcast industry, television, cable, entertainment and media in general, the industry players, they look at these stories and they're seeing themselves. And remember, this is important to say when you're looking at, this is not the direction that both of these brands you'd expect to be going. Like AEW continuing to grow, sure. It is, an upstart brand. It's overachieving right now, I would think. Because I don't think anybody was expecting them to go and do what they're doing right now. And you look at also the direction of what WWE did in order to go and counter, which was actually, it was very desperate on their end to do what they did with what they did, right? With AEW. It's apparent in the first year that WWE has been concerned and anxious about AEW coming into the crosshairs because they are able to build a new audience, if you will. Let's just be honest here. If you're looking at the ratings numbers that Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer talk about on a regular basis, you can say for sure that the audience isn't the same. And you could also make the argument that the audiences coming out now to watch AEW are those that have felt betrayed. They have been disappointed, and they feel discouraged by the direction of WWE programming, and it's been like that for a while now. And in that 1 year, regardless of what you say about the pandemic, both of these companies had to go and do the same thing. Both had the same problem, but both companies did not handle the pandemic the same way. That's where we are right now. And so one's a very corporate company. One is owned by a billionaire that is, running it kind of loose. It's not super structured and organized like a corporation. They obviously are run like a very well wrestling company for all intents and purposes. They've been consistent in putting out programming. They have not missed anything. They've been consistent. Their programming has been quite consistent. And I don't know. I just look at the first year and I say, look at the moves that WWE decided to do in order to try to go and counter program. As I always said, 2 weeks before taking the NXT model and tossing it into cable television, taking away the value of what was on the WWE network. Has that been a good move? And honestly, Nobody talks about this, but do we feel that NXT in some way, shape, or form, by increasing the show from 1 to 2 hours, like adding that extra hour to that show, let alone that they moved from the network to USA, but making them go live, making them go 2 hours, I would imagine that's actually hurt the product some, because they're not taping like they were before, which was really good for them, and doing the show live each week and letting people see where definite mistakes of some of the stars they would normally have. This is what you got to think about. Because of the fact they're going live, there's obviously going to be some stars at the Performance Center that are not high up on the food chain. Some of the developmental talent, they're not going to get up there to be noticed on television because of the fact they don't have any experience doing live matches or doing a lot of house shows for that matter, right? You could disguise some of that. You could hide some of that by recording it. So if you don't have that, what are we doing here? I mean, do you understand where I'm coming from? What are you going to do to help yourself at this point in time to help build the developmental portion of the brand? Well, it's not there. And that's the problem. And I think that's something that this company just has not really thought about. Again, this is just like long-term thinking that does not get considered. WWE is a company, for the most part, their real-time thinking is short-term. There are no long-term plans. It's apparent. It's obvious. I don't know why they do that, but that's their choice. And people have complained about it, namely yours truly. Again, this is the problem with this company. They do this for, again, I've been recording this show. It's going to be 8 years coming up. Again, 563 episodes I've done of this show. And I've been consistent about how many times I've been critical of the creative and the direction of the company. They are making a couple of good moves right now. Roman Reigns is a no-brainer. It's a great move. One of the best things about Clash of Champions this past weekend, yeah, and you know, I maybe I wasn't as praiseworthy of the Intercontinental title ladder match this past weekend, but I wasn't, because we've seen this all before. And I don't get so excited about some of those matches when it's like, how much more over the top do we need to see Jeff Hardy do something else to hurt himself? And the same thing with NXT. Some of the matches I've seen there that have been over the top. And I'm like, we're not doing ECW all over again, Triple H. What are we doing here? Bruce Pritchard, we cannot be doing what we did on Impact. Come on. That's what the problem is right here. Or what we saw in WCW. Or what we saw in the Attitude Era. It continues on. And I'm just not feeling it at all. So we're going to start with the upstart and the stories we're going to talk about first. Let's analyze not so much the content of the story, but the perception of both brands, according to these variety writers that wrote these stories. Two different stories, by the way. So Joe Otterson put out a story today in a celebration of AEW Dynamite reaching its 1-year anniversary, which will be as this show drops later tonight, October 1st. So let me go to the second paragraph. 1 year and a global pandemic later, AEW is still going strong. The company has delivered consistent wins in the TV ratings and on pay-per-view, while also continuing to grow its roster and further define its brand. Much of that is due to the passion of those at the top of AEW have for the product, which is palpable when you hear them talk about it. So they talk to Cody Rhodes. He says, I don't have children, so this is my child. It really is my baby in terms of how I feel about AEW and how I feel about the roster. Even people who are older than me, I think of them as my kids. So I feel very strongly about it. And I think we've had a wonderful year, so I'm in love with AEW. They go to the ratings. Dynamite has been airing against NXT on Wednesday nights, consistently beating NXT head-to-head in both the key demographics and total viewers in that time. And according to analysis by Variety's intelligence platform, AEW has an average weekly audience of 835,000 viewers in Nielsen's live plus same-day ratings over the past year. NXT has had 696,000 viewers. As we know, Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live are still reigning champions in terms of viewership, but let's move along. And of course, in this story, which you can find, I'll have a link for it on the website, wrestlingisreal.com. By the way, I did change the website around, and I did some more work to it. I really like the way it looks right now. I hope you'll take a look at it for yourself and tell me what you think about it. But I wanted to change some things up because I just wanted to look a little bit better. So now if you go up to the features post is the embed player for the podcast page. You can take a look at everything that's going on right there. Then you have all the follow buttons for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, where you can subscribe to the show. It's all there, easy to read if you're especially on the desktop. But I also recommend take a look at it on the desktop or look at it on the web version. There's a mobile version that just gets you right to the shows. But if you're looking at it through a desktop, pretty easy to see everything there. And everything's just there, easy to go for you to look at. So take a look at it for yourself. Looks good to me, so I hope you'll like it. Also put some headlines up there if you want to take a look at that for yourself. Now, fans have dubbed the competition between AEW and NXT the Wednesday Night Wars, calling back the so-called Monday Night Wars between WWE and WCW. And while most AEW stars have stayed out of any talk of a ratings battle, former AEW champion and former WWE champion Chris Jericho has taken the opposite approach. Which he's been basically the only one that's really kind of taken like that approach of the Wednesday Night Wars, calling himself the Demo God, right? As when asked about the Demo God gimmick, he says, quote, "I was just really getting to the whole concept of what the demo means. There's a little bit of a war, obviously, just by the fact that NXT is on a Wednesday night. We don't really pay attention to what they do during the show. But after of course, you check in the ratings, the company really can't point that out. But I can because I'm a heel and I can say whatever I want to incorporate that, and that no one's going to get any heat for it because it's the truth." And then they talked about John Moxley, and Moxley said he's been very vocal about his displeasure with WWE's creative process since he left the company. And we've heard other people that have also left the company either to layoffs or furloughs or whatever, and we've heard the same sentiments. Now, the use of writers stifle the creativity of the talent. AEW has allowed him the opportunity to break free from that. He said, quote, "We let our talent speak in their own voice, say what they want to say, stay with a feeling, and it creates authentic moments. And you've seen with that with myself, Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, Darby Allin, and so many others. You have the feeling of being out there on the fly with no script. You just know we have to go off the air exactly at 10 o'clock, and I have to smash the champagne bottle over your head." They had talked to Brandy Rhodes. We're going to pass on that. I love her, but we're going to just pass on what she says. She, Stephanie McMahon type of quotes. It's okay. Listen, I appreciate what she's doing. I really do. Now, the first few weeks of the pandemic, uncertainty was the name of the game. AEW pre-taped a number of shows in the early going, but travel restrictions quickly found them without a massive number of in-ring talents. And Tony Khan comes in here. He says, after the first 2 weeks, our roster started to thin out. What happened was we were forced to do shows with less than 30% of our wrestling roster available to us. And I'm actually proud of those shows as I am of anything because they kept us going. I wanted to film shows to keep the storylines moving so that we could build a testing plan. I always believed that, as we've shown, a safe testing plan can be implemented. I didn't know how long it was going to take to design and get all the tests we would need and get it all set up, but it came together in about a month. The company managed to stay afloat despite the lack of a live crowd, and with the television audience largely remaining consistent, which is very important. They have been able to keep the audience for the most part. There's really not been much of a dent, and if there was, they quickly recovered. So AEW has already earned the trust of Warner Media by that point. Now, that's an important line. Now, we talked a while back about Kevin Riley leaving the company. He was the person who was actually managing programming for TNT, TBS, and True TV. Well, we're getting some endorsements within the company, even though they've gone through some changes. This is important. This is very important. Again, let me read that first line. AEW has already earned the trust of Warner Media by that point. The media conglomerate announced in January was extending its deal with AEW through 2023, while also adding a new 1-hour weekly show that will debut in 2021. But AEW's ability to adapt to the pandemic has only deepened the respect that Warner Media executives have for the company. So during the pandemic, AEW has been able to solidify their relationship. That is monumental. So any doubts I had in my mind and in your minds that you thought that AEW might not be able to go and last their contract, I don't know. I think they're in a good place right now because the way they have performed works. It was effective. They kept their audience more than anything else. When they had to wait for NBA to come back, when they had to wait for, what they could do with their other shows, everybody was at a fever pitch. Everybody was anxious about the programming and what was going on. And AEW did such a good job of keeping a consistent, watchable product that didn't feel like it was during the pandemic. You did feel some of that, but man, it was hard to find, which was amazing. So Brett White, he's general manager of TBS, TNT, and True TV. This is, again, a monumental thing. Look at what you're reading right here. I hope you'll read this because, again, Brett White's comments, poignant. Quote, I think where the rubber really met the road was when during COVID hit and watching Tony really pivot and grow. And he was able to keep those storylines going and put so many great things together, even through a global pandemic. And that tells you everything you need to know about the DNA of that brand and that guy as a producer. That is high praise for Tony Khan. He gets credit. He has to get credit. That whole team gets credit. That is poignant. That's very important. That gives me a lot of confidence in the company because the broadcast partners they're encouraged. Their relationship is strengthening because of the pandemic. It has brought them closer together. So whatever kind of allegiance that was lost, they have restored it. I think their relationship is as strong as ever when I read that. AEW has also expanded beyond its live shows, launching a toy line in early August, including action figures and replica championship belts. The toy line is already performing well out of the gate, according to Julie Lynette from NPD Group, the U.S. Toys division for the group that is doing the toy line. For the month of August, it ranked as the number 3 new property among U.S. toys. What? Now, it might be tough because of the fact that people are not going to go to the stores to go pick up toys because I don't know how much toy shopping was being done in stores during the pandemic. Maybe in August it might not have been as good. Or maybe it's just doing good online. I don't know. But that'd be interesting. Defined as all toy brands that recorded no sales between January 5th and May 30th, 2020. Now, this is also important. Sam Linsky, Senior Vice President and Co-Head of Scripted Originals for TBS, True TV, and TNT, says that there are also plans to continue expanding the AEW brand across the full range of the Warner Media portfolio. Bingo. In the story, you're seeing the real story about the 1-year anniversary because what they're really giving us is the second part of this article that tells you that AEW is succeeding. They're winning. They are what they have absolutely done in 1 year more than anything else. They haven't been able to grow the audience out, and the pandemic is all about that, right? But more importantly, they've been able to win over their broadcast partners. Their broadcast partners are, in most words, they're pretty happy right now. And they want to work with this company. They want to do more with AEW. They see expanded horizons for AEW. Linsky also says, quote, we have an opportunity to use all facets of Warner Media in a way that most places can't. We've got a comic book company. We've got video game companies. We've got merchandising people. We've got people who make animation for television. We've got reality TV producers. It's all in-house. So we have a real opportunity to spread this intellectual property and grow it across Warner Media. That is amazing. Eric Bischoff would be so proud if he had this. Because that's basically the deal that he had with Turner Networks back in the day, more or less. Not all of this, but the company like Warner Media, I mean, what a partner. They want to do more. They're going to take the EW brand and expand it. It's going to be more than just a wrestling brand. WWE, are you reading this? This should scare the shit out of you. It's on you, WWE. You allowed this to happen. I have been on this bully pulpit for 7 years, 10 months, talking to you about you guys need to get your shit together because competition at some point down the line, I didn't think it was going to be Ring of Honor. I didn't know if TNA was going to get their shit together or Impact Wrestling. I still thought there might be something that could be considerable of competition from the smaller brands. Sure, the TV brands, absolutely. MLW, NWA, sure. But now, in the same way that WWE was able to build themselves up back in the 80s, AEW could soon be considered the more prominent, cooler brand. And this could have been avoided. When I first started the show, Cody Rhodes was still in WWE, right? Chris Jericho was in WWE, right? It's the sins of Vince. For his ego and for what he wants to do with the company and his stranglehold on this company and the suffocation of creativity of this company, WWE, they hurt themselves. They did this to themselves. Why would you allow yourselves to fall apart like this? I mean, competition, you always knew it was going to come. You had other companies, yeah, they might not have been in your rearview mirror, but man, you were not ready for what could happen with AEW. And the way you handled the new competition, you tried to stifle them. You tried to eliminate them. You used the power of your broadcast partners to make that possible. You signed so much talent to contracts. And by the way, how did that work for you last year? You signed all that talent. The pandemic hits, and then you have a lot of them you have to let go. John Moxley, FTR, Miro. I mean, and then you have the Good Brothers leaving. Brian Myers. You let Heath go. You let Rhino go. Sure, WWE fans out there, you purists, you guys in the bubble, my podcast brethren, I love you guys. I know what you're going to come back at me. It's like, well, these guys mean nothing because they're not in WWE. Fine. But the thing is, did they have to go by the wayside? Were they being used properly? Because obviously Bruce Pritchard and they like to have their veteran stars. And they don't have them now. They don't have Zach Cardona, and they don't have, they have a lot of guys they don't have anymore. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were obviously mid-card stars that could have still contributed now. At least they were over more than maybe Andrade and Angel Garza, maybe more over than Street Profits, maybe more over. I mean, just think about it. And there were a lot of stars you might have had at NXT that you let go. Or there were a lot of stars that you thought, oh, we're not going to take them. Because you never looked at their potential. He said, no, it's okay. Meanwhile, AEW has embraced the rest of the wrestling community. They have somewhat of a relationship with NWA and Billy Corgan during this rough time. Man, putting Thunder Rosa on, kicking ass on TV, giving her the exposure. It's the same thing, Vince, that you did with ECW with Paul Heyman back in the day. Remember? When did it become such a one-sided affair that you're so afraid of what's going on? Why'd you do that? Why did you let this happen? It's not that hard. It's really shouldn't be that hard to figure out what's going on. Let's move along to what WWE's problems are, according to Variety. Again, one story. Look at all the positivity and praise and direction of All Elite Wrestling, where they're going. Look at the WWE now. Let's look at them. Gavin Bridge writes, WWE's mounting problems, audience decline, Saudi Arabia, Andrew Yang. So we're obviously getting a much different outlook for this story. And again, this is the entertainment media industry. And this isn't Variety's intelligence platform. So they definitely put some time into this story. And I'm just really concerned about this company. I'm worried about the WWE right now. This says a lot. Professional industry players. Like, I mean, regardless of what you think of journalists these days, it's still the fact that this is positioned for both of these companies from a financial standpoint, from a programming standpoint, from a legitimacy standpoint, and from a broad overview, popularity standpoint. The industry is going to pay attention to this. Celebrities, Hollywood, LA, New York, advertisers, stock and shareholders, investors, whatever there might be. They're all paying attention to what's being read here in these two articles. So with WWE, the mainstay for 40 plus years, and here's what we got. This is the way they started the article. Storm clouds continue to gather for Vince McMahon's WWE. VIP has covered its audience decline in detail. And while this continues and is a long-term concern, other issues are now rearing their head that threaten the company's bottom line. We've been talking about this since I started this program. There's a reality to this, folks. We are wrestling fans, but the reality is it's the support of the brand. It's that wrestling needs to thrive. We want to have it thrive. We're fans. It's real to us. We want it to be good. Regardless of the pandemic, WWE stock is already trending down. Now, regardless of the pandemic, we're already in a V-shaped economy. So the thing is, we had a drop in price and it came back up. Now, the stock is down 45% year to year. It was $70 per share last year. It's now $38. Actually, I'm going to look what it is today. As a chick today, it's $40.47. Still not great. I mean, it's back over $40, and that's, for them, it's been kind of steady as it has been. Because you look at year to date, their price was as low as $30 a share. They have gotten up to $40 a share. So there's something there. But again, they were at $70 last year. They were at $66 January 7th. Like, they were on fire. They were good. Right after the broadcast announcements, they were hitting on all cylinders. Because remember, at that point, that was when the deal was done for SmackDown to get the show on live in October. And remember, it got a good boost before that with Raw and SmackDown getting new broadcast deals, right? So there's a real possibility, they said, it will continue to fall over the next few months based on analysis that VIP has conducted over the round 4 issues the company is facing right now. Number 1, TV decline. The flagship show has lost around 2 million viewers for most 2020 episodes versus 2015. They lost 2 million viewers. Where did they go? Roughly 1 million of them went to AEW. Let's say 750,000. We'll be generous. We'll be generous. But there's a lot of that audience just left, abandoned. And this company's not doing anything to bring them back. They're all adopting the digital. They probably have left wrestling alone, probably left their cable box and cut it. Cut the cord to go to Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. And throughout, McMahon has consistently blamed storylines for the ratings plunge without acknowledging that he is the man who signs off on the stories. July 2020 earnings call, the second quarter. He gave the perennial claim that WWE would work on having better stories in order to win back viewers. And he's been saying that over and over. And in this article, by the way, there are the graphs there. Take a look for yourself. And it's not like these people are just, they're not aware of what the product is. Because Gavin here does write in the story that there are farcical events on Raw, such as McMahon's son Shane previously forced to leave WWE in 2019, suddenly having an underground fight club with no context to why it exists or why wrestlers would want to take part. Then you have a mysterious group of masked wrestlers with a vendetta who WWE's own website knew were about to attack the company seemingly without telling WWE security, and whose motivations and actions were as damp a squib as could be. Yeah, and by the way, I will give some credit to Retribution. You know, Donovan Dijakovic, or T-Bar, at least has been pretty vocal on social media, and he's trying to go and do something with everything that's going on. So I appreciate that. But, I mean, is it really making enough difference right now? Now, let's get back to the story. They put out exclusive, they did a YouGov, I think it's YouGov.com, the pollsters. They did a poll on behalf of Variety Intelligence Platform. 471 adults were sampled, aged 18 or older, who used to watch at least one of AEW Dynamite, NXT, Raw, or SmackDown. And they were asked why they stopped watching professional wrestling. Reasons why U.S. viewers stopped watching professional wrestling. 30% said it seemed more cartoonish than when I liked it. 29% stories were not as good or as interesting. 28% said characters were not as good or as interesting. 26% matches were not as good or as interesting. 14% content was geared more towards children. 9% announcing was not good. As good. 7% the show wasn't listening to the fans. And they had another 36% that didn't really have any particular anything other than just other or not sure. The main reasons behind the audience decline concern lower quality writing. If McMahon is serious about storylines getting better, the same workaholic may need to admit he could do with going to a beginner's screenwriting class in order to learn about story structure and character arcs to win back the sizable amount of former viewers. Well, I've talked about this before. Again, they might have a beginning and an end to a feud, but they are not doing what's right to build the middle. I mean, building the plots within, like adding layers to the plot and adding reasons to be engaged into the storyline until we get to the end and giving us a proper finish. Viewing status of professional wrestling among U.S. adults 18 plus. 12% said I currently watch regularly or occasionally. 43% I used to watch but no longer do. There's your market. There's your 2 million viewers. 2 million viewers. 18 plus. 43% I have never watched any shows or series. So yeah, it's going to be a certain niche that will not watch wrestling. Sure, it's not their bag. But 43% used to watch, no longer do. If you wanted to translate that, that would probably bring Raw's ratings back above 3 million. That would probably get SmackDown's ratings back above 4 million. Seriously. This can be done. It's feasible. I have no doubt in my mind this company could not get Raw's ratings back up to 3 million and get SmackDown's ratings back up to 4 million. I believe it. I don't think it's that hard. It's not hard to believe it. But it's difficult to see if they can do it. Now, in this survey, wrestling shows former viewers used to watch. Well, Dynamite's not much of a factor because it's such a new show. But Raw, 55%. SmackDown, 55%. That means they just quit watching the main roster altogether. NXT, 10%. There's a regression there. The other thing is, and this is what was also very interesting, is the decline in the kids' audience. So trying to get younger viewers to go and get back and get involved into the action. Not just coming for a live show and not really caring about who's going to be there as like it's a circus, like a one-time thing, but getting them involved to want to watch TV every week and watch the wrestlers and their favorites. And remember, this is when you had, for a good amount of time, the last decade plus, well, I mean the last decade, especially in the 2010s, we call it the PG era, the time when they were trying to get more kids to watch the program. They were trying to basically adopt new viewers at the expense of the adults that were getting older and getting past it. So they mentioned that WWE reoriented itself in the mid-2000s to more family-friendly content, TV PG ratings. This was a smart move at the time as it opened the door for larger sponsors who didn't want to be associated with the sex and violence that fueled wrestling's boom in the late 90s. Unfortunately, children are deserting TV at a far greater rate than overall viewing. Between 2016 and 2019, primetime viewing of the 9 kids' networks fell by 49% because they're going to streaming. When you have certain families that do not want to go ahead and spend money on cable, well, they don't need it for children's programming. There's enough children's programming on streaming to keep them happy. They don't need it. And there's not any particular programming on the cable channels to really keep people interested in saying, hey, you know what? Or they can just get Disney Plus, or they can get whatever other streaming service that is catered to kids. So they don't need to go and hold on to the cable because it costs too much. This is clearly not the reason behind the overall audience decline for Raw, but it does illustrate the futility of not adapting with the times. With the core target audience deserting linear TV for streaming or video games, there will come a point soon where WWE will have to decide to either target content to the audiences who do watch TV or pivot distribution strategies to where kids are watching. Continuing the status quo is akin to McMahon putting his head in the sand at a time when long-term planning is most needed to avert further eroding the audience. Good mention about the ratings decline. Pretty comprehensive here in the polling and in the research here. Absolutely right. I don't think you need to go into trying to create kid-friendly programming. You just need to find some stars that are kid popular. That's where you bring in baby faces. But we don't have that right now. We don't have it. So what is there to do? Next, they complain about this. They mentioned the Saudi Arabia deal. I'm not going to get into that part because, listen, we've already talked about Saudi Arabia much on this program. And listen, I understand that this revenue helps boost the bottom line and fueled their stock value. They were basically replacing the money that was not being made on pay-per-view by putting content on the network, number one. And at the time when they signed the deal, they were trying to make the money they weren't making on the broadcast deals until they did. That's basically, in a nutshell, what happened with Saudi Arabia. Analysis by WrestleNomics tied a sudden increase in second quarter 2019 revenue for the amount the largest customer owes with the Saudi Arabia events. The implication is the Saudi Sports Authority is the customer. They're just paying outright. Now, Saudi Arabian events cannot be held, so we're not seeing those this year. Assuming it's likely that the Saudi General Sports Authority, the SGSA, has this large balance of payment owed with WWE, COVID-19 is having a second impact on WWE's bottom line. With the price per barrel lower than the minimum level, Saudi Arabia needs to balance its budget. So oil prices are not helping for the value of their money. So it's looking unlikely that the Saudi General Sports Authority will not be able to pay WWE soon. So again, Saudi Arabia is not even going to pay for this year. So losing out on $20 million. They can't put on shows. Saudi Arabia cannot host shows. And this is not an American contract here. This is you're dealing with the Saudi princes. So what are you going to do? Take them to court? I'm like, what are you going to do here? WWE's going to probably just eat that money. But again, they didn't have to go out there either. And for the sake of their wrestlers, they're probably happy not having to go, as we've heard in previous shows. Now, here's where Andrew Yang comes in. He's the tech entrepreneur who ran for president this year in the Democratic primaries leading up to this general election. So, former Democratic presidential nominee Andrew Yang, he apparently is a childhood wrestling fan, took umbrage in WWE's recent ban on their performers engaging with third-party outlets and sponsorships on social media platforms. Yeah, Andrew Yang speaking up, probably not a good thing for WWE to have to deal with. But again, it's being brought up here. Andrew Yang recently wrote on Twitter September 4th that this was after Cameo and Twitch were no longer being allowed to be used by the superstars per WWE's decree. And then something changed about that. I forget what happened. But Andrew Yang wrote, if I'm not the Secretary of Labor, I'm pretty confident I'll have his or her number to talk about the ridiculous classification of wrestlers as independent contractors. WWE wrestlers, he mentions. While controlling their name and likeness for years, even for something as benign as Cameo. Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch for WWE to be so... really just being so strict on their contract about this. I don't know if it's included or not in their contracts, but, WWE's stance is that it invests time and money in the IP and the intellectual property performers use on TV, making up big sponsorship deals with the likes of Mars and Mattel, and they don't want this potentially jeopardized by wrestlers signing deals with rivals. Yang is not questioning this, whether he raises the issue that the company has no right dictating to non-employees, given wrestlers are not in fact employees of the company and thus will receive benefits like a full health care and pension plan. They're independent contractors, we know this, meaning they technically have the right to work elsewhere, but their contracts prohibit this. They're also not eligible for business travel and reimbursement, health insurance if they fall sick, but are covered for workplace injuries, and are banned from selling T-shirts or making non-company approved media appearances. If the companies found themselves classified as employees, it would cost the company millions as expanded benefits are applied with them. With Yang vowing to take this very top, there's a chance that the revenue could take a hit because Andrew Yang, will he take the fight to this? I think he's going to get people already starting to talk about it. And again, we've heard about unions back in the day with Jesse Ventura and all this, right? But it's where they are. And there you go, man. It's amazing what they said about that. It's concerning, to say the least, about how this company is really going through so much. They're scared. I don't know if this Andrew Yang thing will be so much of a factor. I don't know if he's going to continue along with it or not, if that's going to be like a mission of his. If there is something that happens, we'll report it to you right here. I don't know. So next week is it right? WWE Draft just supposed to be coming up right now? That's the next thing that's coming up? And What Culture did put some information out there. I figured let me go ahead and bring this up while we're at it. I'll go ahead and make some comments about it. Why not? Because that is the next thing that's coming up. It's not being talked about too much on television, but they did bring it up now that we already have finished up and we have moved past Clash of Champions. And we have Hell in a Cell coming up in November. So October 9th and October 12th, Raw and SmackDown will be drafting a number of superstars to their brands in order to revamp their shows. They throw some names out there. Ricochet to SmackDown. I'm not sure how much that's going to be a difference, but it would give him a bigger spotlight and potentially a stronger push. NXT's moved on from Ricochet, so there's no need to pushing him over there. And at the moment, NXT's trying to establish stars like Bronson Reed, Damian Priest, Santos Escobar, and others. They suggest King Corbin the Raw. I'm actually agreeing with that. Boost of momentum and renewed purpose is the real reason for King Corbin. I think that makes sense. And honestly, if you want to put him up as an opponent against Drew McIntyre pretty quickly, you could do that. I don't see why not. Eric should go to SmackDown, especially when he has no tag team partner to work with. And if you didn't remember, Eric as Hanson, or actually Eric is Raymond Rowe. That's right. I forget the names. Raymond Rowe, for a while, was actually doing well as a single star. Because remember, Ring of Honor then decided to put them together as War Machine. And it just came like that. But they were actually doing pretty good as individual stars. And the reason why is because Hanson and Rowe took on each other in a hell of a match. I forget which show it was at Ring of Honor that was going on with that. Right now, Jey Uso being put up as a single star, getting the match up against Roman Reigns. I actually like the fact of seeing Jey Uso going out on his own. That actually is pretty good. And Big E going out on his own as part of the New Day also is a good move. It is something fresh and different. Forgotten Sons should go to Raw. Yeah, I would imagine that, but again, I don't know what's going to happen with Forgotten Sons. The Jackson Riker character continues to be a lightning rod because of his political stance. Whether you like it or not, that's been a problem there, and everybody's going to be concerned about that. Rhea Ripley, they said, should be moved up to Raw. So they're saying that the women's division for Raw is finally looking like it's picking up. Asuka's at the helm. No longer the Sasha Banks Bayley show that has been moved over to SmackDown fully. You have fresh faces like Peyton Royce and Zelina Vega to grab some airtime. Ripley would be a great addition to Resurgence. Give the division some more firepower. Sure. And then you could have where Charlotte Flair could come back and Asuka can be right there, and you have a little bit of a tete-a-tete with that women's title. If Asuka loses the belt or not, you could go with that route. I can understand where they're coming there. Liv Morgan, they say, should go to SmackDown. Liv Morgan doesn't make sense being part of the Riot Squad. I think they just need to split that up again. Because I think Liv Morgan was together, especially even, I think there was something where she got a little something out of the whole Bobby Lashley Lana storyline. I really believe that. I don't know why, but I just felt like there was something there out of all of it. And so take her away from Ruby Riott. Let Ruby Riott just stay on her own as a single star on Raw, right? And then have her have singles matches against Nikki Cross, Alexa Bliss, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and others. I don't think that's a bad idea either. I like that one as well. Braun Strowman to Raw. He's already on Raw Underground. He's a fresh start after the Bray Wyatt feud. It doesn't make a difference. He is absolutely the big show of this era. That's what he is. Underground right now, logically, opening him up to new feuds with the likes of the Hurt Business, Retribution. Even Dominic Mysterio could revive his dad's old giant killer gimmick, taking on the big man. And it isn't long before Braun as a character is once more dead in the water, like he's found himself already many times throughout his career. That's what it goes on. But again, he is the big show. It's unfortunate. Johnny Gargano to SmackDown, they say. I don't think we need more NXT stars moving up. I don't see that. But I mean, yeah, Johnny Wrestling, if you're going to bring him up, I mean, he's done everything that you could possibly do on the NXT roster. So sure. He would fill out the ever-growing Intercontinental title scene, gain enough momentum to have a match with Roman Reigns for the Universal title, they believe. I don't think that'll happen. But I think mid-card title picture would be where Johnny Wrestling could be. I believe that. So if you want to make that move, sure. Why not? And we know that Ciampa doesn't want to go. Otis to Raw. And they say because Otis and Mandy should be together. With that, you would let Heavy Machinery together move over to Raw as a team. Now, here's what they really said is the Money in the Bank briefcase. Who would Otis realistically go after to cash in on? Drew McIntyre? Roman Reigns? No. The man has no use for the briefcase that needs to be taken from him ASAP. So maybe you let Miz and Morrison take it away from him on SmackDown, keep it, and deal with the consequences of trying to cash in on Roman. Or maybe Otis brings it over to Raw and loses to someone like Randy Orton. And the move would not only enable Otis to be rid of the burden that is the briefcase, but also give Orton more heat and his already incredible heel run before cashing in on a prone McIntyre before losing the title to a returning Edge later down the line. Okay. Finally, Samoa Joe should go to SmackDown, they say. So they're saying that Joe shouldn't stay behind the desk. He should get back in the ring. Roman Reigns recently teased an alliance with Joe. Could be the perfect way to have Joe to return to the ring. Return to the ring, having Joe drafted on my SmackDown on the guise he is merely there as a brand's new color commentator. Then when everybody least expects it, jumps from the desk, destroys the poor sap who is standing in the way of Reigns. You know what? I love that move. Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns for the SmackDown title. That'd be let's keep the Samoa move keep going. Let's keep that going. I love that. I really do enjoy it. I think Roman Reigns showing his, again, tribal chief, head of the table. I love all of that. They should keep that going. I think it's a fantastic idea. Now, one other story I want to talk about is Roman Reigns, because even though Roman Reigns right now is in such a good spot, you have to realize something that The Rock said recently on a podcast. He was on the Complex Load Management podcast. And this is what I'm sure the company is worried about. Because Roman Reigns, we already know last year or the year before, he was in Hobbs. Oh, yeah, last year was in Hobbs and Shaw, the part of the Friends of the Fast and Furious universe with The Rock and Jason Statham. And he was part of that movie. So he could always be brought back to a sequel. And who knows what else he could be doing. Because obviously, those veneers he got put in, the new teeth, that's the show. That's for Hollywood right there, baby. Let's just be honest here. Asked if he had Hollywood goals, he said, quote, "I think so. It was tough for me because I had opportunities come my way in the last 8 months. But because I wasn't working, I felt worried about trying to take on opportunities when the mainstream of my income wasn't being taken care of. I was at home because of the pandemic and put everything aside project-wise off until I get back to what I do, doing what I do with my day job. But yeah, you can't fall down your whole life. I'm trying to take care of myself the best I can and stay in shape. But your spine only wants to hit that mat so often. There is a legit bump card we have as performers, and you don't want to wear that thing out. I don't want to hit the last tick and be like, I'm done. I want to have a few more bumps on my card and have them on reserve. I have like 3 more years of bumps for sure, but I don't want to use them. I think Hollywood, if the right opportunities come my way and it all works out, I would definitely be into it. Once the pandemic is done and production starts coming back up and new projects start coming into place, let me tell you, if Hollywood is looking for a new action star, they're going to probably give Roman Reigns a shot. They could see him as the newest incarnation of The Rock. Don't deny it. Rock is getting a little bit older. I mean, he can still do action movies. That's fine. But if you want to get somebody new, you could absolutely get Roman Reigns to be part of this. He could be the next person brought in. Just saying. He finishes up and says, I don't want to rush into anything. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. If the right opportunity came, I would be game. Wow. But right now, he is the top guy. And it's very important for the company to continue to keep being him up as that top guy. Just saying. Very important. All right, we're going to leave it there. We have an NXT TakeOver coming up this weekend. NXT TakeOver 31. I will go ahead and check it out for everybody out there. I guess I'll do a post show for that show. Let's go talk about what they're going to have coming up. 5 matches scheduled on the card. We'll do a little preview predictions real quick. Damian Priest versus Johnny Gargano, NXT North American Championship. I'll take Damian Priest on it. Io Shirai, well, Candice LeRae is injured. She has an ACL injury, so she's out. And as far as I know, they do not have, I don't know if they have announced an opponent for Io Shirai for the upcoming pay-per-view. And it looks like because of the fact she's had a third ACL injury, you know, it looks like she's not going to be able to go make herself back out there. So, with that said, there has been no star, I guess, that has been announced yet to take over for that. And there's been nothing said yet, so we just have to wait. I didn't get a chance to watch NXT tonight, so we'll find out what's going to go on there. And by the way, if you're looking down the line for programming coming up, when it comes to wrestling shows coming up very soon, so after NXT TakeOver 31, we'll have Impact Wrestling's Bound for Glory October 24th. I don't know what they're saying about if they're going to be keeping it in Nashville, the studios there or not. I'm not sure. Hell in a Cell is October 25th. So we're going to have a great weekend of wrestling coming up that weekend. New Japan comes up November 7th, and the AEW Full Gear in Jacksonville, that'll be November 7th as well. That's coming up pretty soon. Now, one other thing I want to take a note of, which is really promising, Billy Corgan is giving an update on the NWA. The NWA will be returning at some point. He went to Instagram, he says, we're currently talking about bringing Power back very soon, even though it means we can't have fans in the stands because we just want to get back to work. It's nice to see our friend and former champion Tim Storm here. If anyone can lead us out of this, it's a man or woman like him, who gives it all, and he or she's got it when the chips are down. Sounds more grim than I mean it. Case, yeah. Still here, still kicking, ready to rock. So they're going to be coming back very soon. That's great news. And at the meantime, NWA has been part of UWN's Primetime Live since its debut on September 15th. And there you go. So at least they're still working. At least they're out there anyway. But I can't wait for Power to come back. Sooner than later, of course. So we'll keep it there. And pretty soon down the line, we're going to start leading up to what Impact Wrestling has in store for Bound for Glory, because I'm interested for that. At the moment, the matches they have scheduled so far, it's only won the Impact Tag Team titles. It will be a 3-way match. Let's be a 4-way match. Motor City Machine Guns will defend the titles against Ace Austin, Madman Fulton, Good Brothers, and the North. That's a hell of a match. 4 corners match, basically. A fatal 4-way for the Impact Tag Team titles. But we'll find out what they're going to do next in terms of championships and what other matches they'll have set up. I haven't had a chance to catch up on Impact Wrestling this week yet, but I'll catch back up and we'll start looking at what they got coming up down the line. We'll leave it there, folks. Thank you for listening to the program, finding it as you do. If, of course, you want to look at it on the YouTube, all my programs are over on the YouTube as well. youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Thank you for listening. Thanks for finding the show as you always do. Come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast, brought to you by KingofAmazon.com. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook at Wrestling is Real. Subscribe to the Wrestling is Real podcast through all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. You can also look for episodes on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. You can find all this information and more by going to the website, WrestlingIsReal.com.